Before the galaxy came to know the terrifying shadow of the black armor, before the cold metallic breath echoed through the corridors of Star Destroyers, there was a man who believed he was doing what was right. Anakin Skywalker had fought through the blood and ashes of the Clone Wars, believing that every battle brought him closer to protecting the ones he loved. But the darkness had not arrived with a clash of armies or the falling of stars. It had crept in quietly, feeding on his fear, his desperation, and his absolute refusal to let go. When he finally opened his eyes on the surgical table of Coruscant, encased in a mobile iron tomb that bound him to perpetual agony, Anakin Skywalker was gone. In his place stood Darth Vader, a hollow weapon forged in pain and bound to the will of an emperor who viewed him as nothing more than an instrument of terror. Yet behind the iconic red lenses of his helmet, a restless fire continued to burn. Vader was not merely a servant content to sit at the right hand of Palpatine, nor was he a mechanical monster driven purely by mindless command. Throughout the long decades between the collapse of the Republic and the destruction of the first Death Star, Vader embarked on a series of relentless, secretive, and utterly chaotic missions across the farthest reaches of the galaxy. These were not the grand, televised campaigns of the Imperial Navy, nor were they the official decrees read before the Imperial Senate. They were the private hunts, the forbidden archaeological expeditions, the brutal score settlings, and the unhinged trials of strength that the Emperor never officially acknowledged. From the subterranean lava seas of Mustafar to the forgotten Sith tombs of the Outer Rim, from hunting down rogue Jedi Masters using ancient forbidden sorcery to taming gargantuan leviathans on remote monster worlds, Vader pursued his own dark destiny with a terrifying singular focus. He tested the limits of his broken body, pushed the boundaries of the dark side, and waged a private, continuous war against any who dared stand in his path. This is the complete, untold history of those legendary solo missions, the secret assignments, and the wild side quests that defined the dark reign of Darth Vader. Chapter 1. The transition from Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader was not an instantaneous shift of mind, but a long, brutal tearing of the soul. In the immediate aftermath of the Purge and his catastrophic defeat on the molten shores of Mustafar, Vader found himself imprisoned within a heavy, unyielding suit of black armor that felt less like a mechanical miracle and more like a permanent instrument of torture. Every breath was a labored struggle against the rhythmic hiss of a mechanical respirator. Every step was a heavy, calculated effort against servo motors that lacked the natural fluid grace of his former body. His synthetic skin burned with synthetic nerve endings, and the constant, dull ache of his incinerated flesh served as a permanent reminder of his failure. Emperor Palpatine had designed the armor with deliberate flaws. He ensured that the cybernetic limb connections were crude, that the control panel on Vader's chest was dangerously exposed, and that the suit possessed an inherent vulnerability to electrical arc discharges. Palpatine did not want a rival. He wanted a leashed beast, powerful enough to enforce his reign, but crippled enough to ensure he could never challenge the Master. Furthermore, Vader was left without a lightsaber. The weapon that had defined his life as a Jedi Knight had been taken by Obi-Wan Kenobi, left behind in the ash beside the lava river. Realizing that his new apprentice needed to fully embrace the traditions of the Sith, Palpatine summoned Vader to the Imperial Spire on Coruscant. The Emperor explained that a Sith Lord could not simply construct a lightsaber using traditional methods, nor could he harvest a green or blue crystal as the Jedi did. A Sith blade was earned through blood, dominance, and absolute corruption. To forge a crimson blade, Vader would have to track down a surviving Jedi, defeat them in single combat without a lightsaber of his own, take their Kyber crystal by force, and bend its physical consciousness to his dark will through a process known as bleeding. This was Vader's first true solo mission, a brutal trial of survival, designed to test whether the broken cyborg could truly function as a Sith Lord. With no weapons, no official Imperial fleet support, and only his knowledge of the Force and his raw physical strength, Vader set out into the galaxy. His destination was the river moon of Aldoline, where a legendary Jedi Master named Kirak Infila had taken the Barash Vow. The Barash Vow was a sacred oath taken by Jedi who chose to completely detach themselves from all Jedi Order activities, isolating themselves in deep meditation to focus solely on the pure will of the Force. Because Infila had been isolated during the execution of Order 66, he had completely escaped the initial massacre. Vader traveled to Aldolim aboard a modest starship, keeping his presence entirely hidden from the local populations. Upon landing on the mountainous moon, he began his ascent toward the high-altitude monastery, where Infila resided. The journey up the mountain was a physical nightmare for Vader. His new cybernetic legs struggled with the steep, uneven terrain, and his respiratory systems strained against the thin mountain air. Yet every jolt of pain, every mechanical failure, and every surge of frustration was channeled directly into the dark side, converting his physical agony into raw, unyielding power. Before Vader could reach the summit, he was confronted by the monastery's ancient defense droids and complex security traps, which Infila had programmed to test any who approached. Using only his cybernetic strength and powerful force telekinesis, Vader crushed the security droids, ripping their metal hulls apart with his bare hands and hurling massive boulders to clear his path. The destruction he left behind alerted Master Infila, who descended from the monastery to meet the dark intruder. Kirak Infila was a formidable warrior, a Jedi who had spent decades perfecting his combat skills and whose entire existence was dedicated to martial mastery. When he saw the towering black figure clad in armor, Infila immediately sensed the overwhelming darkness surrounding Vader. But he also recognized the pain and instability within the cyborg. Infila drew his elegant green-bladed lightsaber, while Vader stood weaponless, relying entirely on his physical armor, his mechanical limbs, and his mastery of dark side telekinesis. The duel on the mountain peak was brutal and unforgiving. Without a lightsaber to parry Infila's swift, precise strikes, Vader was at a severe disadvantage. Infila moved with blinding speed, carving deep gouges into Vader's armor, damaging his chest control panel, and severing one of his synthetic legs. With a powerful force push, Infila hurled Vader off the edge of a high cliff, sending the Dark Lord plummeting onto the rocky riverbank, thousands of feet below. Infila believed the battle was over, convinced that the mechanical monstrosity could not possibly survive such a fall. However, Infila underestimated the sheer hatred that sustained Darth Vader. Lying shattered on the riverbank, with water washing over his damaged armor and dark side energy crackling around his exposed electronics, Vader refused to die. He used the Force to drag the severed parts of his mechanical leg back to his body, using spare wiring and raw telekinetic pressure to repair his limb. He used his rage, his self-loathing, and his hatred for the Jedi to rebuild his strength, dragging himself back up the mountain toward a nearby hydroelectric dam that overlooked a populous civilian city below. When Infila realized that Vader had survived and was ascending toward the dam, the Jedi Master rushed to stop him. This time, Vader changed his strategy. Recognizing that Infila's compassion for innocent life was his ultimate weakness, Vader used the Force to rupture the structural supports of the massive dam. Millions of gallons of water began pouring toward the civilian city below, threatening to drown thousands of innocent inhabitants in seconds. Faced with a horrific choice, Infila was forced to break his combat stance. He turned his attention away from Vader, channeling all of his Force energy into holding back the collapsing dam and saving the city. In that moment of selfless distraction, Vader struck. Moving with cold, merciless efficiency, Vader used the Force to wrap an iron grip around Infila's throat, lifting the Jedi Master off his feet. As Infila choked, struggling to maintain his hold on the dam, Vader reached out and plucked the green lightsaber from Infila's belt. With a cold flick of his wrist, Vader snapped Kirak Infila's neck and cast his body into the raging waters. As the Jedi's life faded, the dam collapsed entirely, wiping the civilian city off the map. Vader stood alone on the crumbling stone, holding the green lightsaber that would become the foundation of his new weapon. He cared nothing for the city, nothing for the drowned civilians, and nothing for the honorable Jedi he had killed. He had accomplished his objective. Vader traveled straight from Aldolim to the volcanic world of Mustafar, the site of his greatest defeat and the place where his dark transformation had been finalized. Descending into a deep subterranean cave system beneath the burning plains, Vader sat in total isolation upon a natural altar of dark side energy. He disassembled Infila's lightsaber, extracting the vibrant green Kyber crystal from its casing. The process of bleeding a Kyber crystal was a psychological and spiritual war. Kyber crystals were living entities, naturally attuned to the light side of the Force, and they resisted the dark side with immense spiritual force. When Vader attempted to pour his rage into the crystal, the Kyber fought back. It projected a powerful spiritual vision directly into Vader's mind, showing him an alternative reality where he rejected Palpatine, sought out Obi-Wan Kenobi, asked for forgiveness, and struck down the Emperor to return to the light. For a brief, agonizing moment, the ghost of Anakin Skywalker wept within the vision, longing for redemption, peace, and the restoration of his lost life. But the vision was swiftly crushed under an overwhelming wave of dark intent. Vader rejected the path of redemption. He rejected forgiveness. He embraced his agony, his loss, his guilt, and his absolute hatred for everything he had once been. Vader poured every drop of his suffering into the crystal. He flooded it with the memory of Padmé's death, the burning heat of Mustafar's lava, the betrayal of the Jedi Council, and the cold isolation of his iron suit. The subterranean cave shook violently as dark-side lightning crackled from Vader's hands, striking the floating crystal. The air burned with ozone, and the ground cracked under the sheer weight of dark energy. Slowly, the living Kyber crystal began to scream through the Force. Its brilliant green hue cracked, bled, and transformed into a deep, crimson red. The crystal had been broken, corrupted, and bound entirely to Vader's dark will. Vader reassembled the hilt, inserting the newly bled crimson crystal into a dark, customized casing. Standing up in the pitch-black cave, he ignited the blade. A brilliant, crimson beam of pure plasma burst forth, casting long, bloody shadows across the ancient stone walls. The rhythmic hum of the blade resonated through the cavern, echoing the heavy, mechanical breathing of its master. Darth Vader had survived his trial. He had faced a Jedi Master without a weapon, rebuilt his broken body on the field of battle, and forged the crimson blade that would become a symbol of terror across the entire galaxy. Returning to Coruscant, Vader presented the red lightsaber to Emperor Palpatine. The Emperor smiled, recognizing that while the man named Anakin Skywalker was dead, the Dark Lord he had created was now fully realized, ready to be unleashed upon a defenseless galaxy. Chapter 2. Having forged his crimson lightsaber on the ash-choked plains of Mustafar, Darth Vader returned to the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, expecting his master to deploy him at the head of the Imperial Navy to crush the remaining pockets of galactic resistance. Instead, Emperor Palpatine presented him with a far more insidious assignment, one that required Vader to step into the shadows and forge a weapon capable of hunting down those whom the clone army had failed to eliminate. While Order 66 had decimated the vast majority of the Jedi Order, dozens of Jedi Knights, Padawans, and Masters had managed to vanish into the vastness of the Outer Rim, hiding their Force signatures and blending into local populations. Palpatine escorted Vader into the dark, subterranean depths beneath the former Jedi Temple, a location that had once housed the sacred archives of the Order, but was now being repurposed into a dark-side stronghold. There, Vader was introduced to a select group of former Jedi who had fallen from grace, broken through relentless torture and dark-side re-education. These individuals had been organized into a specialized inquisitorial program known as the Inquisitorius. Led by a towering, pale-skinned Padawan warrior known as the Grand Inquisitor, these dark-side agents were trained to track down Force-sensitive individuals, interrogate suspects, and execute surviving Jedi. However, Palpatine recognized that the Inquisitors were crude instruments. They were skilled, ruthless, and filled with hatred for their former brethren, but they lacked discipline, strategic cohesion, and the absolute mastery of dark-side combat necessary to defeat true Jedi Masters. The Emperor officially placed the entire Inquisitorius under Vader's direct command, assigning him the task of molding these former Jedi into an elite, terrifying hunting pack. This was not a mission of grand space battles, but a grueling, brutal campaign of internal discipline, tactical training, and relentless hunting that would stretch across the galaxy's darkest corners. Vader began his command, not with speeches or strategic briefings, but with immediate, unsparing combat. He gathered the Inquisitors in the training chambers, deep beneath the temple, and engaged them all simultaneously. Moving with cold, mechanical precision, Vader disarmed, battered, and crippled several of the agents within seconds. He taught them that their previous Jedi training was a weakness, that relying on defense and form was an invitation to death. He forced them to abandon their traditional lightsaber styles and embrace aggressive, unpredictable tactics designed to overwhelm their opponents through sheer terror and relentless pressure. To ensure that the Inquisitors could never threaten his own position, Vader systematically taught them incomplete techniques, ensuring their combat styles retained subtle, structural flaws that he could exploit if any of them ever dared to turn against him. He severed limbs during sparring sessions to teach them the reality of darkside combat, replacing their lost body parts with crude cybernetics that mirrored his own physical suffering. Under his brutal tutelage, the Inquisitors ceased to be individuals. They became an extension of Vader's dark will, feared by the galaxy as the Emperor's bloodhounds. Their first major test under Vader's direct field command took place on the remote atmospheric world of Cala. Reports had reached the Imperial Security Bureau that the King of Cala, Lee Char, was harboring a mysterious advisor who was quietly organizing planetary resistance against Imperial taxation and military occupation. Suspecting that this advisor was a surviving Jedi, Vader assembled the Grand Inquisitor, the Sixth Brother, and the Ninth Sister, leading a massive Imperial invasion fleet directly into the oceanic system. Upon arriving at Cala, Vader launched an immediate amphibious assault. Massive Imperial landing craft descended through the stormy skies, deploying thousands of specialized aquatic stormtroopers and heavy submersible walkers into the vast, planetary ocean. Vader himself descended into the dark depths, his suit modified to withstand the immense hydrostatic pressure of the deep sea. Accompanied by the Inquisitors and an elite squad of Purge troopers, specially trained clone soldiers equipped with electrostaffs and heavy blasters, Vader began his descent into the aquatic cities. The mystery advisor was revealed to be Farron Bar, a surviving Jedi Padawan who had escaped the Purge and spent years building a religious cult around himself on Cala. Bar had studied the fall of the Jedi Order and concluded that the Jedi had failed because they had played by the rules of the Republic. To defeat the Sith, Bar believed he needed to provoke a galactic war that would force the galaxy to rise up against the Empire. He deliberately manipulated King Lee Char into defying Imperial demands, fully aware that the resulting Imperial invasion would cause the deaths of millions of Mon Calamari and Quarren citizens. As Imperial forces clashed with Mon Calamari defense frigates and aquatic militias, Vader and his Inquisitors tracked Bar down to an ancient, submerged city structure. The underwater battle was chaotic and terrifying. Giant sea monsters, indigenous war beasts, and submerged mines tore through the Imperial forces. But Vader advanced through the dark water like an unstoppable leviathan. Using dark-side telekinesis, he crushed enemy submarines from the outside, collapsed underwater domes onto defending forces, and sliced through aquatic war machines with his crimson lightsaber. When Vader and the Inquisitors finally breached Farron Bar's inner sanctuary, they found the young Jedi surrounded by his devout followers and an elite guard of mind-controlled Purge troopers. Bar had managed to slice into Imperial military databases and uncover the true nature of the Inquisitors, identifying each of them by their former Jedi names. Before the combat began, Bar delivered a psychological strike, addressing the Inquisitors directly and reminding them of the Jedi code they had betrayed. With a desperate, calculated move, Bar used the Force to trigger the sleeper programming within the Purge troopers present in the room. Because these Purge troopers were late-model clones who still carried the biochips responsible for Order 66, Bar shouted the command, pointing at the Inquisitors and declaring that they were Jedi. The biochips instantly activated. Ignoring Vader entirely, the Purge troopers turned their blasters on the Sixth Brother and the Ninth Sister, recognizing their former Jedi signatures and opening fire in a chaotic flurry of blaster bolts. The betrayal created instant pandemonium in the submerged chamber. The Inquisitors were forced to defend themselves against their own squad of elite troopers, deflecting blaster bolts and cutting down the clones who had suddenly turned on them. Sensing his opportunity, Farron Bar engaged Vader in single combat, striking out with his lightsaber and attempting to utilize the aquatic environment to hamper the Dark Lord's movements. However, Bar severely underestimated the gap in power between a former Padawan and Darth Vader. Vader ignored the chaos around him, brushing aside Bar's lightsaber strikes with effortless parries. While the Inquisitors struggled to survive the clone revolt, Vader advanced on Bar with crushing momentum. The Dark Lord used the Force to manipulate the immense water pressure outside the sanctuary windows, creating hairline fractures in the heavy transparent steel glass that threatened to flood the entire facility. Bar fought with frantic energy, arguing that his death would matter because the war on Mon Cala would inspire the galaxy to fight the Empire. Vader spoke no words in response. He simply pressed the attack, using his mechanical strength to shatter Bar's defense and slice off the young Jedi's lightsaber hand. As Bar fell to his knees, clutching his severed wrist, Vader raised his hand and used the Force to completely shatter the reinforced glass windows. A tidal wave of freezing, high-pressure ocean water burst into the chamber, crushing the remaining Purge troopers, drowning Bar's followers, and sweeping the Inquisitors into the swirling depths. In the middle of the aquatic catastrophe, Vader stood anchored to the stone floor through raw dark side power, his crimson blade glowing fiercely beneath the dark water. He caught Farron Bar in a crushing force choke, lifting the drowning Jedi off the floor as the chamber filled entirely with seawater. Vader delivered the final strike, driving his red blade through Bar's chest and ending the young Jedi's life. With Bar dead, Vader swam up through the flooded ruins, retrieving his surviving Inquisitors from the oceanic currents and ensuring that the Imperial fleet above completely subjugated the world of Mon Cala. King Li Char was captured, the planetary defense forces were dismantled, and Mon Cala's vast shipyards were annexed under direct Imperial military control. The mission on Mon Cala established the absolute authority of the Inquisitorius under Vader's leadership. It demonstrated to the Emperor that Vader could manage complex, multi-layered campaigns while hunting down high-value Jedi targets who sought to organize political resistance. Returning to Coruscant, Vader purged the remaining clone squads from the Inquisitorius program, replacing them with standard Imperial Purge troopers who carried no biochips and were bound strictly by Imperial conditioning. The hunt was far from over. The Mon Cala campaign was merely the opening chapter in a multi-year crusade that saw Vader and his Inquisitors sweep across the Outer Rim, systematically purging surviving Jedi, destroying hidden holocron vaults, and ensuring that any spark of the light side was extinguished before it could catch fire. Through this relentless campaign, Vader proved to his master, to his subordinates, and to himself that no remnant of the past could escape the shadow of the Sith. Chapter 3. With the Mon Cala campaign brought to a decisive and bloody close, Darth Vader turned his sights toward a far more personal and permanent project. Although the Imperial Palace on Coruscant provided every resource the Empire had to offer, the bustling capital world was a constant irritation to the Dark Lord. The political maneuvering of Imperial moffs, the endless bureaucracy of the Senate, and the lingering echoes of the former Jedi Temple served as irritating distractions. Vader sought a place of absolute isolation, a personal sanctuary where he could focus his dark side meditations, study the secrets of the Sith, and build a fortress that could serve as a focal point for dark side power. When Emperor Palpatine granted him permission to claim a world for his personal domain, Vader did not choose a lush, scenic paradise or a strategically vital fortress world in the core. He chose Mustafar. To the rest of the galaxy, Mustafar was nothing more than an insignificant volcanic wasteland in the Outer Rim, valuable only for its minor mining operations. But to Vader, it was the site of his greatest agony, his total physical destruction, and the ultimate birth of his dark persona. It was on Mustafar that he had lost Padme, lost his limbs, and been betrayed by Obi-Wan Kenobi. By building his home upon the very soil where he had fallen, Vader intended to turn his deepest wound into a source of unlimited power. To design his fortress, Vader brought a captured, ancient Sith artifact before the Emperor, the helmet of Lord Momin. Momin had been an ancient Sith architect and heretic who lived centuries before the rule of two, a dark side artist who believed that the Force should not merely be used as a weapon, but as a medium to create permanent works of terrifying beauty. The helmet contained Momin's living spirit, preserved through dark alchemy across thousands of years. Recognizing Momin's architectural genius, Vader allowed the spirit to possess the body of an Imperial architect, tasking him with designing a castle that could channel the natural dark side energies flowing beneath Mustafar's volcanic crust. Vader selected a specific geographic location for the construction, an ancient dark side cave network situated directly over a powerful natural force locus, near the very river of lava where Obi-Wan Kenobi had left him to burn. The construction process was an ordeal of staggering proportions. Imperial engineering crews were brought to the world under strict secrecy, working under hazardous conditions while lava flows, violent electrical storms, and native Mustafarian insurgent attacks threatened to destroy the structure at every stage. Momin presented design after design, but the first 8 iterations of the castle failed completely. Each time a draft design was completed and constructed, Vader attempted to use the fortress's central tuning chamber to open a door through the Force into the cosmic realm, hoping to reach beyond the Veil of Death and retrieve the soul of Padme Amidala. But each attempt resulted in catastrophic failure. The dark side energies would flare out of control, triggering massive lightning storms that shattered the castle walls and reduced the newly built structures to smoking rubble. As the construction dragged on, the native Mustafarian population realized that the dark monstrosity being erected on their world threatened the ecological and spiritual balance of their planet. Gathering an immense army of native warriors, riding gigantic lava-faring beasts, and utilizing heavy mining artillery, the Mustafarians launched a massive, desperate assault against the fortress during the construction of the 9th design iteration. Imperial stormtroopers and garrison forces were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and ferocity of the native assault. Waves of Mustafarians breached the outer perimeter, destroying Imperial supply depots and threatening to breach the central construction tower. Rather than ordering an Imperial retreat or calling for naval orbital bombardments, Darth Vader descended into the chaotic fray alone. Standing on the open drawbridge, before the unfinished gates of his castle, Vader drew his crimson lightsaber and faced the advancing native army. The sky above was ablaze with crimson lightning and choking clouds of black ash. The Mustafarians unleashed a devastating barrage of plasma fire, heavy mining charges, and mounted cavalry charges, attempting to crush the Dark Lord beneath overwhelming momentum. What followed was a display of dark side power that bordered on biblical destruction. Vader did not merely fight with his lightsaber. He commanded the very environment of Mustafar. Channeling his immense hatred and drawing upon the natural dark side locus beneath his feet, Vader reached out with the Force and tapped into the subterranean lava lakes surrounding the fortress. With a sweeping gesture of his mechanical arms, Vader lifted a colossal, towering wave of molten lava directly out of the river, raising a wall of liquid fire hundreds of feet into the air. With a brutal forward thrust, he hurled the sea of lava down upon the advancing Mustafarian army. The fiery deluge swept across the battlefield, instantly incinerating the native war beasts, melting their heavy artillery, and wiping out thousands of enemy warriors in a single, terrifying instant. The remaining Mustafarian forces broke into a complete panic, fleeing back into the volcanic wastes as Vader stood untouched amidst the sea of fire, his black armor gleaming in the harsh crimson light of the burning landscape. The native population would never dare challenge the fortress again, viewing the Dark Lord as a demonic god of destruction that ruled their world. With the native threat permanently eliminated, Momin finalized the 9th design of the castle. The structure was built in the shape of a colossal, jagged tuning fork, constructed from black obsidian stone and heavy dark metal alloys. The twin spires of the castle were specifically engineered to act as a massive conductor for dark side energy, drawing the planetary force currents up through the central cavern and focusing them directly into a private meditation chamber at the heart of the fortress. When the construction was complete, Lord Momin activated the central tuning chamber, successfully opening a glowing, unstable portal through the Force into the metaphysical plane. However, Momin betrayed Vader at the critical moment. Using the open portal, Momin drew his original physical body out of the past, resurrecting himself fully in the physical realm and stepping back into the galaxy. Momin locked Vader out of the central chamber, claiming the fortress and its immense power for himself. Enraged by the ancient Sith's betrayal, Vader smashed through the reinforced blast doors of the chamber. A fierce, deadly duel erupted between the ancient Sith architect and the modern Sith Lord. Momin fought with fluid grace, wielding twin lightsabers, and boasting that Vader was nothing more than a mechanical slave to a weak master, lacking the true artistic vision of the ancient dark side. Momin sliced into Vader's suit, severing his mechanical limbs and leaving the Dark Lord battered on the stone floor. Standing over the crippled cyborg, Momin raised his blades to deliver the final strike, but Momin had underestimated the infinite depth of Vader's rage. Refusing to yield, Vader used dark-side telekinesis to grasp a massive, multi-ton obsidian altar block from the wall. With a crushing downward motion, Vader slammed the stone block directly onto Momin, crushing the ancient Sith Lord into dust and ending his brief resurrection. Exhausted, heavily damaged, and bleeding dark energy, Vader dragged himself into the center of the active portal. He stepped through the doorway of light and entered the spiritual void of the dark side, seeking the soul of Padme. Within the metaphysical realm, Vader walked as a shadowy, spectral figure of dark energy. He moved through visions of his past, seeing the landmarks of his life pass by. His childhood on Tatooine, his training as a Jedi, his marriage to Padme, and his fall on Mustafar. As he pushed deeper into the void, he finally saw the luminous, peaceful figure of Padme Amidala standing in the distance. Vader reached out to her, calling her name through the spiritual silence. But as he drew near, the vision of Padme looked upon his dark, terrifying form with sorrow and horror. She stepped back from his reach, declaring that Anakin Skywalker was dead, before dissolving into dust and vanishing into the infinite expanse of the Force. A wave of absolute despair washed over Vader. He realized the bitter truth that no amount of power, no ancient Sith sorcery, and no architectural conduit could ever undo the choices he had made, or bring back what he had destroyed. A brilliant, blinding flash of white light exploded through the void, representing the eternal light side of the Force, rejecting his presence. Vader was forcefully thrown backward out of the portal, crashing onto the cold stone floor of his meditation chamber on Mustafar. Behind him, the central portal overloaded, collapsing in on itself and destroying the ancient tuning mechanism forever. Vader lay alone in the dark, silent chamber of his newly completed castle. He had built his sanctuary, defeated the Mustafarian armies, and slain an ancient Sith Lord, but his ultimate quest had ended in absolute failure. Rising slowly to his feet, Vader looked out through the tall, narrow, transparent steel windows of his tower, staring down at the endless rivers of burning lava below. Castle Vader was complete. It stood as a towering, black monument of terror that dominated the landscape of Mustafar, an enduring focal point for the dark side of the Force. But inside its cold obsidian walls, Darth Vader remained what he had always been since that fateful day on the volcanic shore, a prisoner of his own choices, bound in armor, surrounded by fire, and forever isolated in the dark. Chapter 4. With Fortress Vader completed on the burning plains of Mustafar, the Emperor summoned his apprentice back to the core to address an insidious threat that had quietly taken root within the highest levels of the Imperial military apparatus. While the Galactic Empire appeared monolithic and absolute from the outside, its internal power structure was a ruthless pit of ambition, rivalry, and treason. High-ranking Imperial officers, regional governors, and sector commanders often viewed Darth Vader not with reverent awe, but as a bizarre, terrifying outsider, an enforcer who operated completely outside the traditional chain of command and reported only to the Emperor. Among these ambitious commanders was Grand Moff Wilhuff Tarkin, a brilliant, cold, and utterly pragmatical military strategist who had earned Palpatine's absolute trust through his unwavering ruthlessness during the Clone Wars. Tarkin recognized that for the Empire to achieve absolute stability, the military hierarchy and Vader had to establish a mutual understanding of each other's domain. However, a faction of disloyal officers within the Imperial Naval Academy on Eriadu and the High Command on Coruscant had formed a secret cabal. They believed that Vader was an unpredictable monster whose presence undermined military order, and they began plotting an elaborate, covert assassination campaign to eliminate the Dark Lord once and for all. The conspiracy was led by a rogue group of decorated officers who had hired elite, off-the-grid bounty hunters and renegade mercenaries, equipping them with experimental anti-force weaponry, heavy ion blasters, and sonic disruptors. When Vader uncovered the initial threads of the plot through a series of brutal interrogations of suspected traitors, he chose not to simply deploy the Imperial Security Bureau or launch an official military investigation. To Vader, an official investigation was a weak, bureaucratic response. He preferred to turn the assassination plot into a private hunt, setting out to eliminate every single conspirator personally and demonstrate to the entire Imperial officer corps the absolute futility of treason. Vader tracked the lead conspirators to a remote industrial moon in the mid-rim known as Etla, which served as a covert staging ground for illegal weapons testing and mercenary contracts. Traveling alone aboard his sleek, customized Eta-2 starfighter, Vader arrived in the system without an escort fleet, completely masking his approach beneath the radar shadows of local asteroid fields. He bypassed the moon's orbital defense sensors and touched down in the middle of a sprawling, fog-shrouded industrial refinery complex, where the conspirators were conducting a secret meeting with their hired mercenaries. The moment Vader stepped off his ship and entered the cavernous refinery, the trap was sprung. The rogue officers had prepared for his arrival, activating high-density ray shields that slammed down across every exit, trapping Vader in a massive, enclosed kill box. From the catwalks above, dozens of heavily armed mercenaries, battle droids, and rogue Imperial snipers unloosed a torrential barrage of heavy blaster fire, sonic pulses, and explosive charges directly onto the Dark Lord's position. The sonic disruptors were specifically chosen by the conspirators to target Vader's cybernetic suit, as intense sound waves could shatter his internal audio receivers and disrupt the delicate balance of his mechanical respirator. As the deafening sonic blasts hit his armor, Vader felt a surge of excruciating pain. His audio feeds shrieked with high-pitched static, his respiratory rhythm malfunctioned, and his vision flickered violently as dark side energy crackled across his chest control panel. However, the conspirators had made a fatal mistake. They assumed that physical agony would weaken Darth Vader. To a Sith Lord whose very strength was powered by pain, hatred, and rage, the sensory overload served only as a catalyst to unlock unimaginable dark side power. Igniting his crimson lightsaber, Vader did not attempt to find cover or retreat. He moved directly into the hail of fire. With blinding speed, his red blade deflected incoming blaster bolts back at the catwalks, taking out snipers with lethal accuracy. Reaching out with his mechanical hands, Vader used dark side telekinesis to grasp the structural support beams holding up the upper platforms. With a brutal, wrenching gesture, he tore the heavy metal catwalks out of the walls, bringing tons of steel, machinery, and screaming mercenaries crashing down to the hard industrial floor below. The mercenaries deployed automated battle droids equipped with flame projectors, attempting to incinerate the Dark Lord in a wall of fire. The sight of flames rushing toward him instantly triggered the buried, horrific memories of Mustafar within Vader's mind. His rage exploded. With a massive force shockwave, Vader blew the flames backward, turning the fire directly onto the droid operators and burning the mercenaries alive in their own trap. Vader advanced through the burning wreckage of the refinery, like an unstoppable engine of death. He methodically tracked down each mercenary commander, crushing their armor with telekinetic pressure, slicing through battle droids, and ignoring the continuous hail of small arms fire that ricocheted harmlessly off his heavy durasteel chest plate. The rogue Imperial officers, who were monitoring the battle from a secure control room, watched in total horror as their elaborate kill box was dismantled in a matter of minutes. Realizing that the trap had failed, the conspirators attempted to erase their tracks by activating a self-destruct sequence for the entire refinery complex, hoping to bury Vader beneath millions of tons of exploding industrial machinery and toxic chemicals. Alarms blared throughout the facility as structural demolition charges began detonating across the outer walls. Vader breached the heavy, blast-shielded doors of the control room just as the primary generators began to collapse. The rogue officers drew their sidearms, firing frantically at the towering black figure that stepped through the smoke. With a flick of his wrist, Vader disarmed them, using the Force to pull their blasters out of their hands and crush the weapons into useless scrap metal. As the ceiling began to cave in and fire consumed the control room, Vader did not execute the officers immediately. He caught the ringleader of the conspiracy in a crushing force choke, lifting him off the floor while using dark side mind probe techniques to tear through the man's consciousness. Vader extracted every name, every code, and every hidden location associated with the conspiracy across the Imperial military network. With the information secured, Vader snapped the ringleader's neck and turned to leave. As the refinery collapsed around him, in a colossal explosion of flame and twisted metal, Vader walked out of the burning inferno, completely unharmed, using a powerful bubble of force protection to push aside falling debris and superheated plasma. He boarded his starfighter and launched into space, leaving behind a smoking crater on the moon's surface. Over the next several months, a silent, terrifying purge swept through the ranks of the Imperial Navy. High-ranking officers across multiple sector fleets began disappearing under mysterious circumstances. Some were found dead in their private quarters on Coruscant, their necks snapped by an invisible force. Others suffered fatal accidents during routine space patrols, their shuttle engines mysteriously exploding in deep space. Vader conducted this purge with absolute coldness, ensuring that every officer involved in the conspiracy was eliminated without causing public panic or military disruption. When Grand Moff Tarkin confronted Vader regarding the sudden disappearance of several key commanders, Vader made no attempt to deny his actions. He made it abundantly clear that while the Imperial Navy commanded fleets and armies, no rank, no title, and no military position provided protection against treason. Tarkin, recognizing the dark efficiency and absolute authority of the Dark Lord, reached a quiet understanding with Vader. Tarkin agreed to handle the bureaucratic and strategic administration of the Empire, while Vader would remain the absolute, unquestioned enforcer of the Emperor's will. The rogue officer conspiracy was completely erased from official Imperial history, serving as a silent, chilling lesson to any within the military who ever considered challenging the terrifying shadow of Darth Vader. Chapter 5. The absolute subjugation of the Imperial military hierarchy left Darth Vader free to pursue rumors that held far greater weight to his master than any localized military treason. Deep within the Imperial Information Office, reports began to surface regarding an ancient, forgotten world situated in the treacherous, uncharted expanse of the unknown regions. The planet, known in forbidden ancient texts as Exegol, was rumored to be an ancestral stronghold of the Sith, a place where dark side nexus points intersected with long-buried alchemical secrets that predated the Republic by tens of thousands of years. Emperor Palpatine had long been obsessed with uncovering the secrets of Exegol, believing the world held the key to absolute immortality, dark side cloning, and the ultimate creation of an invincible armada. However, early Imperial scouting probes, sent into the unknown regions, were repeatedly torn apart by intense gravitational anomalies, shifting dark matter clouds, and unpredictable solar storms. Reaching the world required navigating a precise, ancient route through the Red Honeycomb Nebula, a cosmic maze that destroyed any starship attempting traditional hyperspace calculations. Recognizing that only a wielder of the dark side possessed the raw sensory perception required to navigate the spatial nightmare, the Emperor dispatched Vader on a solitary expedition into the unknown regions. Equipped with a heavily customized Imperial shuttle, outfitted with long-range sensor arrays, subspace transceivers, and reinforced deflector shielding, Vader set out into the void. This was not a military campaign with an armada at his back. It was a solitary journey into the absolute dark, where a single miscalculation would result in his ship being crushed by supermassive gravitational wells. As Vader approached the perimeter of the Red Honeycomb Nebula, the cosmic environment turned violently hostile. Crimson dust clouds and swirling plasma storms blanketed his viewports, completely blinding his visual sensors and overwhelming his ship's navigation computers. The intense radiation began interfering with his mechanical suit's internal telemetry, causing high-voltage static to surge through his chest control panel and filling his audio feeds with deafening interference. Closing his eyes behind the red lenses of his helmet, Vader abandoned his ship's instruments entirely. He placed his mechanical hands upon the flight controls and allowed the dark side to guide his movements. Channeling his focus into the Force, he perceived the chaotic storm not as a barrier, but as a living, turbulent current. He felt the pull of hidden black holes, the sheer force of gravitational corridors, and the faint, rhythmic pulse of a dark side beacon emanating from the deep void beyond. Thread by thread, Vader guided his shuttle through the treacherous, twisting channels of the nebula, dodging rogue asteroids, superheated plasma jets, and spatial distortions that threatened to strip the hull from his ship. After hours of tense, precise navigation, the red haze of the nebula suddenly parted, revealing a cold, dead star system shrouded in perpetual twilight. Before him lay Exegol. The planet was a desolate, lightning-scarred wasteland of cracked stone and black sand, surrounded by a dark atmosphere that crackled with continuous static discharges. As Vader's shuttle descended into the lower atmosphere, massive bolts of atmospheric lightning struck his ship, frying his external communications array and forcing him to land manually upon a vast, desolate plain of dark stone. Stepping out into the freezing, sulfurous air, Vader felt the overwhelming weight of the dark side, saturating the world. It was a cold, oppressive presence, far different from the fiery, chaotic energy of Mustafar. Here, the dark side felt ancient, stagnant, and deeply unnatural. In the distance, rising like a jagged black mountain out of the flat plains, stood a colossal, inverted pyramid, the ancient Sith Citadel. As Vader marched across the barren plain, toward the Citadel, the ground beneath his boots began to tremble violently. The surface of Exegol was not uninhabited. It was guarded by colossal, bioengineered leviathans known as Summa Verminoth, monstrous, tentacled creatures born of ancient Sith alchemy that inhabited the deep atmospheric trenches and subterranean caverns of the world. A giant Summa Verminoth, measuring hundreds of meters in length, with massive, glowing central eyes and countless razor-sharp tentacles, erupted from the cracked stone floor, blocking Vader's path to the Citadel. The creature unleashed a psychic wave of terror directly into Vader's mind, attempting to break his will, flood his consciousness with madness, and force him to his knees. To a normal sentient being, the creature's mental attack would cause immediate brain hemorrhaging or instant insanity. But Vader's mind was already a fortress built on absolute suffering, tragedy, and unyielding rage. When the beast's psychic assault hit his consciousness, Vader did not shrink back. Instead, he opened the floodgates of his own dark power, projecting his raw, unfiltered hatred, his agonizing memories, and his absolute drive for dominance, directly back into the mind of the creature. The psychic clash was instantaneous and overwhelming. Vader asserted his absolute dominance over the Leviathan's primitive mind, forcing the giant beast to submit to his dark will. The Summa Verminoth's massive tentacles dropped to the stone floor, and the creature bowed its head, completely tamed by the sheer weight of the Dark Lord's presence. Mounting the colossal beast, Vader commanded the Summa Verminoth to carry him directly across the treacherous terrain to the base of the Sith Citadel. Arriving at the towering black gates, Vader dismounted and used the Force to shatter the massive stone doors, stepping into the cavernous, pitch-black interior of the ancient temple. Inside, the Citadel descended deep into the planet's crust. Guided by the crimson glow of his lightsaber, Vader explored the vast underground chambers, discovering secrets that revealed the true extent of his master's long-term ambitions. He uncovered massive, bioengineering laboratories containing glowing cloning vats filled with grotesque, synthetic life forms and experimental strands of artificial dark side wielders. Deeper still, within the subterranean depths, Vader stepped onto a massive observation platform, overlooking a colossal, underground shipyard carved into the planetary mantle. Stretched out beneath him were rows of newly forged, super-heavy star destroyers, each equipped with axial superlasers capable of destroying entire worlds. Thousands of cultists belonging to the Sith Eternal, a fanatical order of dark side worshippers, were silently working in the shadows, constructing the massive fleet in absolute secrecy. Vader realized the terrifying reality of Palpatine's grand design. The Emperor was not merely building a military empire in the known galaxy, but was quietly preparing an absolute, invincible armada that would ensure his rule across eternity, completely independent of the Imperial Senate, the Moffs, or even Vader himself. As Vader stood observing the vast fleet, the dark presence of Emperor Palpatine echoed through the cavernous chamber, communicating with his apprentice through the Force, across the vast distance of space. The Emperor's voice was mocking, asking Vader if he finally understood the true scope of the dark side and the ultimate futility of ever attempting to betray or overthrow his master. Vader stood silent in the crimson light of his blade, staring down at the endless rows of warships and cloning vats. He realized that while he was a terrifying weapon of destruction, his master was playing a game spanning centuries, manipulating life, death, and spatial reality itself. Rather than attempting to destroy the facility or challenge his master's secret project, Vader accepted the reality of the situation. He recognized that his place was to remain the Blade, the supreme enforcer who maintained absolute order in the known galaxy, while these dark preparations continued in the deep void. Vader returned to his shuttle, leaving Exegol behind, and navigating back through the red honeycomb nebula. When he arrived back on Coruscant and reported to the Emperor, no words were spoken regarding the secret fleet or the cloning vats. A silent understanding had been solidified between master and apprentice. The secrets of Exegol would remain buried in the unknown regions, waiting for the day when the dark side would make its final, absolute claim upon the universe. Chapter 6. While the secrets of Exegol remained locked within the depths of the unknown regions, the daily reality of the Galactic Empire required constant, brutal enforcement across the known star systems. The expansion of the Imperial war machine demanded vast, unprecedented quantities of raw materials, deuterium, quadanium steel, and above all, hypermatter and coaxium to fuel the expanding fleets of the Imperial Navy. To secure these resources, the Imperial Mining Guild and corporate cartels expanded aggressively into the Outer Rim, driving indigenous populations off their ancestral lands and establishing brutally managed labor camps. One such operation had taken root on the high-gravity, subterranean world of Jelucan Prime, where a powerful mining conglomerate had partnered with a rogue sector governor to skim massive profits off illegal coaxium extraction. The governor, a corrupt grandee named Lord Vane, had established a private military force equipped with heavy mechanized armor and customized battle droids, effectively turning Jelucan Prime into his personal feudal domain. when official Imperial auditors and Security Bureau inspectors were mysteriously killed in mining accidents, the Emperor realized that Vane was preparing to secede from the Empire, using his hoard of refined Coaxium to buy protection from Outer Rim Syndicate lords. Rather than sending a sector fleet that might trigger a prolonged siege and risk the destruction of the fragile Coaxium refineries, Palpatine dispatched Darth Vader to handle the situation personally. The directive was absolute: eliminate Governor Vane, secure the Coaxium reserves intact, and demonstrate to the mining cartels the absolute price of corporate greed and treason. Vader arrived in the Jelucan system aboard his personal Star Destroyer, the Devastator. Bypassing the planet's heavy orbital defense platforms, Vader boarded a specialized, heavily armored drop pod designed to penetrate high-gravity atmospheres. The pod slammed through the violent cloud layers of Jelucan Prime, crashing directly into the central plaza of Governor Vane's fortified estate, which was built into the side of a massive, hollowed-out mountain ringed by subterranean mining pits. The impact of the drop pod shattered the Obsidian courtyard, throwing up dust and stone fragments. As the reinforced hatch blew outward with a heavy metallic thud, Governor Vane's elite private guards, clad in heavy-powered armor and wielding high-frequency vibro-axes, surrounded the landing site, unleashing a concentrated volley of heavy blaster fire. Vader stepped out of the smoke, his crimson lightsaber igniting with a sharp, lethal hiss that echoed through the high-density atmosphere. The intense gravity of Jelucan Prime, which crushed ordinary human lungs and made movement agonizingly sluggish, had little effect on Vader's cybernetic suit. His servo-driven limbs were engineered for extreme pressure, and his dark side focus allowed him to move with terrifying speed, despite the planet's heavy gravity well. Moving into the line of fire, Vader deflected the incoming blaster bolts with effortless, tight motions, sending the superheated plasma back into the guard's chest plates. He stepped inside the reach of a vibro-axe-wielding heavy trooper, catching the vibrating blade with his left mechanical hand. With a surge of dark side telekinesis, Vader crushed the power cell of the axe, causing it to overload and explode in the trooper's face. Governor Vane, watching the slaughter from a heavily reinforced balcony above, activated his primary defense system. Heavy blast doors slammed down around the courtyard, and from the subterranean mining shafts below, Vane deployed dozens of repurposed industrial mining droids. These giant, multi-limbed constructs were built to carve through solid bedrock, equipped with heavy plasma cutters, jackhammer drills, and high-pressure hydraulic clamps. The mining droids charged Vader, their heavy tread units shaking the stone floor. A massive tripedal mining droid lunged forward, swinging a roaring plasma cutter toward Vader's head. Vader leaped upward, using the force to defy the planet's crushing gravity, landing lightly upon the droid's metallic shoulder. Driving his red blade directly into the machine's primary processing unit, he twisted the saber, melting the internal logic circuits and causing the giant droid to collapse in a shower of sparks. As another droid attempted to crush him beneath a multi-ton hydraulic clamp, Vader reached out with both hands, halting the heavy steel clamp in mid-air with raw force strength. The metal groaned and buckled under the opposing pressure of hydraulics and dark side energy. With a deep roar of concentration, Vader compressed the force around the droid, crumpling the massive industrial machine into a crushed ball of scrap metal that crashed to the floor. Seeing his mechanical forces decimated in minutes, Governor Vane fled into the deep subterranean tunnels beneath his estate, where the primary Coaxium refining vaults were located. Vane intended to set off a thermal charge within the main Coaxium reservoir, threatening to blow up the entire mountain and wipe out the planet's capital if the Empire did not grant him safe passage out of the system. Vader pursued Vane down into the dark, sweltering mining tunnels. The air was thick with toxic volatile gases and superheated vapor from the deep geothermal vents. Any open spark from a blaster or lightsaber in the wrong area threatened to ignite the ambient gas clouds and trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. Recognizing the environmental danger, Vader deactivated his lightsaber. He moved through the pitch-black, narrow tunnels in absolute silence, guided only by his mechanical respirator's rhythmic breathing and his dark side perception. The shadows seemed to twist and stretch around him as he stalked Vane's surviving bodyguards through the subterranean maze. One by one, the bodyguards disappeared into the dark. A guard bringing up the rear would suddenly be lifted off his feet into the ceiling shadows, his neck snapping with a muffled crunch, before his body was dropped back into the dust. Another trooper was dragged backward into a side shaft, his frantic screams cut short by the crushing grip of an invisible hand. Governor Vane reached the central Coaxium vault, panic seizing his chest as he realized his entire security detail had been wiped out, without a single lightsaber strike or blaster shot being fired. Shaking violently, Vane held the detonator to the thermal charge, which was attached directly to a massive, glowing sphere of liquid coaxium capable of leveling 3 star systems if fully detonated. Vader stepped out of the pitch-black tunnel, his tall, shadowy form illuminated only by the faint, eerie blue glow of the liquid coaxium. He made no movement toward his lightsaber, standing motionless at the edge of the vault platform. Vane screamed at Vader to stay back, threatening to press the trigger and vaporize them both. Vane boasted that his death would cost the Empire its entire sector coaxium supply, crippling Imperial naval operations for months. Vader did not answer with words. Instead, he reached out with his hand, targeting not the detonator or Vane's body, but the internal motor functions of Vane's hand. Using precise, micro-telekinetic pressure, Vader locked the muscles in Vane's thumb, preventing the governor from pressing the trigger button. Vane strained with all his might, sweat pouring down his face, but his hand remained completely paralyzed, frozen in place by the Dark Lord's absolute grip. Vader advanced slowly, his heavy boots clicking against the steel grate. He reached out and casually plucked the detonator from Vane's frozen fingers, tossing the explosive device aside into the deep mining abyss below. Catching Governor Vane by the throat, Vader lifted the corrupt politician high above the glowing coaxium reservoir. Vane wept and begged for mercy, offering his secret offshore credit accounts, his private starships, and complete loyalty to the Empire. Vader looked at the trembling man through the cold, unfeeling red lenses of his mask. He spoke with a low, chilling rumble that resonated through the sweltering vault, telling Vane that mercy was a concept reserved for those who possessed value, and that treason carried a price that no amount of credits could buy. With a brutal twist of his wrist, Vader snapped Vane's neck and dropped his lifeless body into the coaxium waste chute below. Within hours, Imperial stormtrooper garrisons landed on Jelucan Prime, taking direct military control of the mining facilities and placing the entire planetary population under strict Imperial administration. The coaxium reserves were secured, refined, and shipped directly to the shipyards of Kuat and Corellia to fuel the expansion of the Imperial Starfleet. Darth Vader boarded his shuttle and departed the system, leaving behind a world thoroughly broken and subjugated. He had proven once again that whether in the glittering halls of Coruscant or the deep, dark mining shafts of the Outer Rim, no corrupt governor, corporate cartel, or high-tech mercenary army could ever escape the absolute reach of the Emperor's enforcer. Chapter 7. With the industrial sectors of the Mid and Outer Rim secured through relentless force, Darth Vader turned his attention back toward an unresolved ghost from the Fallen Republic. A threat that was neither a rogue Jedi nor a corrupt Imperial officer, but an ancient, shadow-bound criminal cartel that had survived the Clone Wars by retreating into the lawless depths of the underworld. The Black Sun Syndicate, along with its rival criminal organizations, had built a vast, untraceable shadow economy during the chaotic collapse of the old galaxy. Operating out of the mile-deep subterranean levels of Coruscant, the neon-drenched crime hubs of Nar Shaddaa, and the trade corridors of Ord Mantell, these syndicates trafficked in illegal spice, enslaved displaced species, and traded in stolen Imperial military hardware. For years, Emperor Palpatine tolerated the syndicates as minor nuisances that kept the galactic underworld distracted and divided. However, intelligence gathered by the Imperial Security Bureau revealed that a consortium of high-ranking syndicate bosses, spearheaded by a cabal of Falline crime lords, had crossed a dangerous line. They had begun purchasing intercepted Imperial code cylinders, naval supply schedules, and classified blueprints, auctioning them on the black market to rebel cells and rogue planetary militias. Furthermore, they had established a shadow network of illegal spice refineries directly beneath the lower levels of Coruscant, bribing mid-level Imperial commanders to look the other way while they funneled millions of illegal credits out of the capital's economy. Vader did not consult the Security Bureau, nor did he issue formal warrants through the Imperial Ministry of Justice. To Vader, crime cartels were parasite infestations that persisted only because the Empire allowed them to draw breath. He determined that a single, devastating strike against the core leadership of the Coruscant underworld would shatter the criminal infrastructure across the entire galaxy. Accompanied only by a specialized detachment of 501st Legion stormtroopers, Vader descended into the abyssal depths of Coruscant, down past the gleaming skyscrapers and planetary traffic lanes, into Level 1313, a dark, lawless sector where the light of Coruscant's sun had not shone for millennia. Level 1313 was a sprawling maze of rusted steel catwalks, neon-lit gambling dens, illegal weapons bazaars, and fortified gang hideouts. The local criminal bosses believed themselves completely immune to Imperial authority, relying on the labyrinthine layout of the lower levels and the sheer hostility of the local population to deter any military presence. Vader targeted the primary stronghold of the Syndicate Consortium, a massive, converted industrial processing vault known as the Obsidian Spire. The Spire was a heavily fortified fortress, surrounded by high-voltage shock fences, automated defense turrets, and hundreds of heavily armed Syndicate mercenaries, including Trandoshan slavers, Aqualition forcers, and rogue Mandalorian bounty hunters, equipped with jetpacks and wrist-mounted rockets. The assault began without warning or artillery preparation. Vader's shuttle hovered above the central landing pad of the Obsidian Spire, dropping its blast shield ramps. Vader stepped out onto the platform alone, his mechanical respirator breathing rhythmically in the damp, polluted air of the lower levels. The Syndicate mercenaries immediately opened fire, unleashing a dense torrent of blaster bolts, thermal detonators, and high-velocity slug thrower rounds. Slug throwers were primitive projectile weapons, often used by underworld assassins against force wielders, as the physical metal bullets would melt upon hitting a lightsaber, spraying hot lead onto the user. As a spray of solid metal projectiles raced toward him, Vader did not raise his lightsaber to deflect them. Instead, he raised his left mechanical hand, projecting a massive, impenetrable wall of dark side telekinesis directly in front of his body. The solid lead projectiles, blaster bolts, and explosive charges froze mid-air, suspended in a swirling vortex of trapped kinetic energy. With a cold, sweeping motion of his arm, Vader turned the kinetic energy back upon the shooters. He hurled the frozen projectiles, thermal detonators, and blaster bolts backward into the mercenary ranks, triggering a series of devastating explosions that blew out the landing pad's blast doors and incinerated dozens of enforcers in a single second. Igniting his crimson lightsaber, Vader stepped through the burning wreckage into the main concourse of the Obsidian Spire. The 501st Legion stormtroopers landed behind him, establishing a defensive perimeter to secure all lower exit routes and ensure that no criminal boss could escape into the vast maze of Level 1313. Inside the Spire, the Syndicate leaders panicked. They activated their heavy defense droids, modified battle droids equipped with heavy repeating blasters and electro-shielding. The droids formed a defensive wall in the narrow corridors, pouring a continuous stream of plasma fire down the hall toward the Dark Lord. Vader advanced through the narrow corridor without breaking stride. Utilizing Darkside Force Crush, he reached out with both hands, targeting the structural housing of the defense droids rather than their shields. The heavy metal bodies of the battle droids crumpled inward like discarded flimsoplast, their power cores rupturing and exploding in a series of violent sparks that cleared the hallway. Reaching the central command vault where the Syndicate bosses had locked themselves behind 3-foot-thick blast doors of reinforced durasteel, Vader did not bother slicing into the security terminals. He plunged his crimson blade directly into the center of the blast door. Superheated plasma melted through the thick steel, sending a shower of molten sparks cascading across the floor. With a brutal force push, Vader slammed the white-hot, melting blast doors inward. The multi-ton steel slabs crashed into the vault, crushing several criminal lieutenants and sending the surviving crime lords scrambling back against the far walls in absolute terror. The Fallian Syndicate leader, a cold, calculating crime boss named Lord Zuro, drew a concealed disruptor pistol, an illegal, military-grade weapon designed to disintegrate living tissue on contact. Zuro fired point-blank at Vader's head. Vader caught the high-energy disruptor beam directly in his mechanical palm, utilizing Tudominus, an advanced dark-side technique that absorbed and dissipated raw energy through the Force. The purple disruptor beam crackled uselessly against Vader's cybernetic hand, before vanishing entirely, leaving the glove slightly singed, but completely undamaged. Zuro stared in utter disbelief as Vader closed the distance, his towering black figure casting a long shadow across the opulent vault floor. Zuro offered millions of credits, secret intelligence on rebel networks, and absolute control over the underworld market if Vader spared his life. Vader looked down at the Falline crime lord, his voice cold, heavy, and resonant within the sealed room. He informed Zuro that the Empire did not negotiate with parasites, nor did it buy what already belonged to the Emperor by right of absolute conquest. Reaching out with his hand, Vader caught Zuro and the remaining crime bosses in a collective, crushing force choke. He lifted 5 syndicate heads off the floor simultaneously, suspended in the air as their air passages were slowly constricted. Vader held them there in silent, terrifying suspension, watching as their frantic struggles gradually ceased and their bodies fell limp onto the cold stone floor. With the leadership of the consortium eliminated, Vader ordered the 501st Legion to seize every data drive, financial ledger, and encrypted code cylinder within the vault. Imperial Security Bureau slicers worked for days, extracting the identities of every corrupt officer, shadow dealer, and black market broker associated with the network. Over the following weeks, the Imperial military launched a coordinated, galaxy-wide sweep based on the seized data. Underground spice refineries on Nar Shaddaa were orbital bombarded into oblivion. Illegal weapons vaults on Ord Mantell were confiscated by Imperial garrisons, and dozens of corrupt Imperial officials were publicly executed on Coruscant for high treason. The destruction of the Obsidian Spire sent shockwaves through the galactic underworld. The remaining crime syndicates, including the Hutts and Pikes, realized that the era of operating with impunity under the cover of galactic chaos was over. They retreated deeper into the shadows, taking extreme precautions to never interfere with Imperial military operations or trade in classified Imperial intelligence again. Darth Vader returned to his quarters aboard the Devastator, leaving the lawless depths of Level 1313 thoroughly cleansed of its criminal leadership. He had proved that no depth was too low, no blast door too thick, and no criminal cartel too powerful to hide from the relentless, crushing reach of the dark side. Chapter 8. With the galactic underworld effectively pacified and driven into deep hiding, Darth Vader was tasked by the Emperor with a mission that touched upon the dark, esoteric mysteries of the Sith's ancient past. Palpatine had received intelligence regarding a secret archaeological expedition funded by a rogue faction of former Republic scholars who had aligned themselves with early insurgent networks. These scholars had uncovered an uncharted, atmospheric world in the deep core known as Malachor-Minor, a shattered moon that housed the ruins of an ancient Sith library vault, a site that predated the Great Hyperspace War by thousands of years. The rumors suggested that buried within the subterranean vaults of Malachor-Minor lay the Obsidian Codex, a dark side artifact said to contain forgotten techniques of Sith alchemy, including methods to bind dark spirits to inanimate metal and manipulate living cellular structures through raw force energy. Palpatine could not permit such knowledge to fall into the hands of rebels, nor could he allow any independent scholar to uncover the true history of the Sith. He commanded Vader to travel to Malachor-Minor alone, execute every member of the archaeological expedition, secure the Obsidian Codex, and reduce the ancient vault to dust. Vader departed for the deep core aboard his personal starfighter. Navigating the deep core was an agonizing, dangerous task, even for an experienced pilot. The extreme density of stars, shifting hyperspatial currents, and massive gravitational wells meant that standard hyperspace travel was virtually impossible. Using his deep connection to the dark side, Vader navigated the volatile spatial corridors, guiding his craft through the stellar chaos until he reached the dark, storm-racked atmosphere of Malachor-Minor. The world was a desolate, jagged wasteland of black glass and petrified stone, swept by perpetual electrical storms that illuminated the sky in flashes of violet and emerald. The ruins of the ancient Sith library vault were carved into the side of a massive, hollowed-out chasm, surrounded by towering, cracked obelisks inscribed with ancient Sith runes. Upon landing near the edge of the chasm, Vader observed the archaeological camp below. The scholars had brought along a heavily armed mercenary company, equipping them with portable heavy turret emplacements, perimeter shock grids, and specialized sonic weaponry designed to neutralize force wielders. They had already breached the outer seal of the vault and were in the process of extracting ancient stone tablets and holocron fragments. Vader did not wait for stealth or tactical advantage. He ignited his crimson lightsaber at the top of the chasm and leaped down into the middle of the camp, landing with a heavy, metallic impact that cracked the glass floor beneath his boots. The mercenaries immediately panicked, opening fire with their heavy repeating blasters and launching high-explosive mortar rounds toward the landing site. Thick clouds of superheated plasma and smoke filled the camp as mortar rounds detonated around the Dark Lord. Moving with terrifying, fluid speed, Vader swung his red blade, deflecting incoming blaster bolts directly into the automated turret emplacements, exploding their power cells and turning the heavy weaponry into melting scrap metal. Reaching out through the smoke with dark side telekinesis, Vader gripped a heavy hover transport truck and hurled the multi-ton vehicle into a squad of mercenaries, crushing their defensive line in a single, devastating impact. The lead scholar, an arrogant archaeologist named Dr. Vanine, ordered his men to activate an experimental sonic disruption grid that had been rigged around the entrance of the vault. As Vader stepped toward the archway, massive emitters pulsed high-frequency sonic waves directly into his body, creating an intense, reverberating field designed to shatter physical bone and overload electronic circuits. Vader felt his suit's audio receivers shriek with agonizing feedback. The internal servos in his mechanical legs stuttered, and his chest control panel flickered erratically as the sonic vibrations threatened to disrupt his life support systems. The mercenaries, believing the Dark Lord was immobilized, moved in with electrostaffs and vibroblades to finish him. However, the scholars had failed to realize that physical agony was the fuel upon which Vader's dark power burned brightest. The intense pain did not break his focus, it amplified his hatred. Channeling his blinding rage into a singular, devastating force shockwave, Vader released an explosion of dark side energy outward in all directions. The sheer kinetic force shattered the sonic emitters into fine dust, blew the surrounding mercenaries off their feet, and crushed their armor against the stone obelisks. The shockwave echoed through the chasm, collapsing the upper stone arches of the camp and burying the surviving mercenaries under tons of fallen rock. Dr. Vanine, terrified and clutching a heavy, iron-bound tomb, the Obsidian Codex, fled into the deep subterranean vaults of the library, hoping the ancient traps within would protect him from the monster above. Vader pursued Vanine into the dark, winding corridors of the vault. The air inside was freezing and stagnant, thick with the stench of ancient dark side energy. As Vader marched deeper, the ancient Sith security systems activated. Statues of long-dead Sith warriors, animated by dark alchemy and ancient machinery, rose from their stone pedestals, drawing massive iron blades that crackled with dark lightning. The stone guardians lunged at Vader, swinging their heavy swords with crushing force. Vader met their strikes with his crimson lightsaber, carving through iron blades and stone limbs with relentless precision. He fought through the ancient sentinels without slowing his pace, using Force Crush to shatter their internal mechanical joints and collapsing the stone corridor behind him to prevent any escape. He cornered Dr. Vanine in the central inner sanctum, a vast, circular chamber surrounded by towering shelves of decaying scrolls and glowing Sith holocrons. Vanine stood near a deep, bottomless abyss at the center of the chamber, holding the Obsidian Codex over the edge. Vanine threatened to drop the ancient artifact into the void if Vader took another step, believing the Dark Lord would not risk losing the priceless knowledge. Vader stopped at the threshold of the chamber. He looked at Vanine through the cold, unfeeling red lenses of his mask, his mechanical respirator echoing through the stone vault. Without uttering a word, Vader reached out with his mechanical hand. Instead of pulling the book toward him, he used the Force to grip Vanine's throat, lifting the scholar high off the ground. Vanine gasped for air, his grip loosening as his hands clawed frantically at his neck. The Obsidian Codex slipped from his fingers, falling toward the bottomless abyss. With a swift, subtle gesture of his other hand, Vader caught the heavy iron book in midair, using dark side telekinesis, floating the artifact safely across the chasm into his waiting grip. Vader held Vanine suspended over the abyss for a long, agonizing moment, allowing the scholar to realize the absolute arrogance of his bargain. Then, with a cold flick of his wrist, Vader released his force choke and let Vanine plunge into the dark, silent void below. Securing the Obsidian Codex inside his cloak, Vader turned his attention to the ancient library vault itself. Palpatine's orders were absolute. No trace of the site could remain. Vader walked to the central force nexus of the temple, an altar of black crystal situated over a deep geothermal vein. He drew upon his deepest well of dark side power, channeling his suffering, his rage, and his absolute mastery of force energy directly into the crystal altar. The crystal cracked under the weight of his power, releasing an unstable surge of superheated geothermal energy from the core of the world. The subterranean vault began to tremble violently as walls cracked, pillars collapsed, and rivers of molten rock burst through the stone floor. Vader walked out of the crumbling library as the entire chasm collapsed in on itself, turning the ancient Sith temple into a smoking, molten grave. He boarded his starfighter and launched into space, just as a massive explosion tore through the surface of Malachor-Minor, erasing the library vault and its secrets from galactic history forever. Returning to Coruscant, Vader presented the Obsidian Codex to Emperor Palpatine. The Emperor smiled as he took the ancient tome, praising his apprentice for executing the assignment with absolute efficiency and absolute ruthlessness. Vader stood silently in the shadow of his master's throne, knowing that another chapter of the past had been buried in blood and stone, leaving the galaxy one step closer to complete, unyielding darkness. Chapter 9. Returning from the crumbling subterranean ruins of Malachor-Minor, with the Obsidian Codex secured, Darth Vader was immediately redirected by Emperor Palpatine to address a critical security vulnerability that had emerged within the outer perimeters of the expansion region. A prominent manufacturing world, Kessel-Minor, had quietly ceased its mandatory shipments of refined fuel catalysts, hyperdrive components, and specialized alloys destined for the shipyards of Bilbringi. The planet was officially governed by an Imperial Moff named Varian Kress, an aristocratic politician who had spent years cultivating an image of absolute loyalty to the New Order. However, intelligence gathered by the Imperial Security Bureau suggested that Kress had secretly defected, aligning himself with a shadowy coalition of Outer Rim insurgent leaders, rogue starship captains, and wealthy corporate financiers. Kress had calculated that the Empire's military forces were stretched too thin across the galaxy to launch an immediate, full-scale planetary blockade without disrupting surrounding trade routes. Furthermore, he had fortified Kessel-Minor with an impressive array of planetary defense systems purchased from black market arms dealers using stolen Imperial bullion. The planetary capital, built inside a colossal, climate-controlled dome situated amidst toxic atmospheric wastes, was shielded by an orbital planetary deflector grid, heavy ion cannons, and thousands of automated anti-orbital missile batteries. Kress believed his heavily fortified dome was completely impenetrable to standard orbital bombardments and planetary landings. Emperor Palpatine viewed Kress's open defiance as an opportunity to deliver a chilling, undeniable lesson to any sector governor considering secession. He ordered Vader to travel to Kessel-Minor, not at the head of an Imperial invasion fleet, but as a solitary force of absolute destruction. Vader was instructed to breach the city's defenses from within, execute Moff Kress, destroy the insurgent leadership gathered inside the dome, and ensure that the planet's vital industrial facilities were returned to total Imperial control. Vader arrived in the Kessel-Minor system, aboard a stealth-class Imperial transport, completely masking his approach beneath low-frequency sensor cloaks. He bypassed the orbital planetary deflector grid by utilizing a high-altitude, suborbital drop maneuver. Boarding a reinforced, heavily heat-shielded insertion pod, Vader launched directly from his shuttle into the planet's upper atmosphere. The pod cut through the toxic, lightning-scarred clouds like a falling meteor, hurtling toward the central hub of the planetary capital at extreme velocity. As the insertion pod neared the reinforced, transparasteel dome of the capital city, Vader manually triggered the pod's forward retrothrusters, slowing its speed just enough to prevent total vaporization upon impact. The reinforced nose cone of the pod slammed directly into the apex of the city's main defense dome. The multi-ton steel capsule tore through the heavy transparasteel panels, sending a massive shower of crystal shards and structural debris cascading thousands of feet down into the city center below. The abrupt breach triggered immediate catastrophic alarms across the city. Emergency blast barriers slammed down across adjacent districts, as internal environmental atmospheric systems struggled to equalize the sudden pressure drop. The insertion pod crashed into the marble courtyard of Moff Kress's central command palace, shattering the stone foundation and creating a massive crater filled with dust, twisted metal, and smoke. Moff Kress's elite personal honor guard, a force of hundreds of heavily armored mercenaries, equipped with jetpacks, repeating blasters, and heavy plasma rifles, surrounded the impact crater, opening fire with a torrential volley of superheated plasma. The mercenaries poured thousands of rounds into the smoke, expecting to find the mangled remains of an Imperial reconnaissance drone or a crashed pod. Instead, the smoke parted to reveal a towering black figure stepping out of the metallic wreckage, completely uninjured. Darth Vader ignited his crimson lightsaber with a sharp, lethal hiss that echoed through the vast courtyard. His mechanical respirator breathed rhythmically, casting an eerie, cold rhythm over the deafening noise of warning sirens. Moving into the line of fire, Vader displayed a masterclass in aggressive lightsaber combat. He deflected incoming plasma bolts with effortless, lightning-fast parries, sending the reflected blasts back into the mercenary ranks with surgical precision. Reaching out through the Force, Vader gripped a low-flying mercenary who was attempting to circle overhead with a jetpack. With a brutal downward gesture, Vader slammed the mercenary directly into the stone pavement, causing the soldier's jetpack fuel cell to rupture and explode in a bright burst of blue flame. The surviving mercenaries attempted to form a defensive wall, using heavy, portable blast shields and repeating blaster turrets. Vader did not slow his march. Channeling raw dark-side telekinesis, he reached toward the heavy turret emplacements, ripping the multi-ton blasters off their mounting tripods and sweeping them across the mercenary line, crushing soldiers against the marble pillars of the palace. Inside the primary command vault of the palace, Moff Kress watched the tactical holofeeds in absolute panic. He turned to his co-conspirators, a gathering of 5 wealthy corporate financiers and insurgent commanders who had funded the rebellion, demanding that they deploy the palace's ultimate defense measure, a squad of experimental, heavy combat droids known as Dreadnought Enforcers. These giant quadrupedal droids were armored in heavy durasteel plate, equipped with dual heavy rotary blasters, flamethrowers, and localized electromagnetic pulse emitters designed to disable electronic machinery. As Vader breached the reinforced outer gates of the palace inner sanctum, 4 Dreadnought Enforcers charged out of the shadows, their heavy mechanical legs thundering against the floor. The droids activated their EMP emitters, unleashing a wave of high-voltage electrical static designed to overload Vader's cybernetic suit and life support systems. The electrical arc discharge struck Vader's chest plate, causing his audio receivers to shriek with static and forcing his respiratory system to stutter violently. Pain surged through his cybernetic nervous system as internal relays sparked and overheated. The droids moved in, opening fire with their heavy rotary blasters at point-blank range, attempting to riddle the Dark Lord with heavy plasma bolts while his suit was disrupted. However, the designers of the combat droids had made the same fatal mistake as countless others before them. They assumed that physical disruption and agonizing pain would weaken Darth Vader. To a Lord of the Sith, physical pain was merely a tool to unlock deeper wells of dark side power. Ignoring the electrical arcs crackling across his armor, Vader raised both hands, unleashing a continuous wave of raw, dark side force lightning and kinetic shockwaves directly into the lead Dreadnought Enforcer. The sheer force of the dark side energy overwhelmed the droid's internal EMP shielding, frying its central processing unit and collapsing the massive machine into a smoking heap of melted metal. Without pausing, Vader closed the distance on the second droid, leaping into the air and driving his crimson lightsaber straight down through the machine's primary logic core. He twisted the blade, cutting the machine completely in half, before sweeping his arm to launch a devastating force push that hurled the third droid through the palace's reinforced transparasteel wall, sending it plunging down the multi-thousand-foot drop outside the dome. The final Dreadnought Enforcer attempted to unleash its flamethrower, spraying a wave of liquid fire toward Vader. The sight of the flames instantly triggered the buried, horrific memories of Mustafar within Vader's mind. His rage exploded into absolute madness. Reaching out with his hand, Vader caught the stream of fire mid-air using dark-side telekinesis, halting the flames inches from his mask, before forcing the volatile liquid fuel directly back into the droid's fuel tanks. The internal tanks ruptured, blowing the final droid apart in a massive fireball that illuminated the palace concourse. With the palace defenses completely obliterated, Vader marched into the inner war room. The thick, reinforced blast doors were locked from the inside, but Vader did not bother cutting through them with his lightsaber. Placing his mechanical palm against the center of the heavy blast door, he channeled a crushing wave of telekinetic pressure into the locking mechanisms. The multi-ton steel doors buckled inward, tearing free from their hydraulic hinges and crashing onto the polished floor of the war room. Inside, Moff Kress and the corporate financiers shrank back against the wall, holding useless sidearms with trembling hands. Kress attempted to plead for his life, offering absolute surrender, complete access to all financial accounts, and the names of every insurgent leader in the sector. Vader walked slowly toward the conference table, his red blade glowing fiercely in the dimly lit room. He looked at Kress through the cold, unfeeling red lenses of his helmet. He told the Moff that surrender was a privilege granted to those who had not betrayed their oaths, and that treason against the new order was a crime that could only be cleansed through complete extinction. Reaching out with his hand, Vader caught Moff Cress and the 5 corporate financiers in a collective force choke, lifting them simultaneously into the air. He held them suspended above the grand holotable, watching cold-bloodedly as their gasps faded into absolute silence. With a brutal, swift motion of his hand, Vader snapped their necks simultaneously, dropping their lifeless bodies onto the floor. With the conspirators eliminated, Vader accessed the palace's primary communications terminal, overriding planetary security networks and broadcasting a live Imperial transmission across every screen on Kessel-Minor. He declared that Moff Cress had been executed for high treason, and that the planet was now under direct, absolute martial law administered by the Imperial Navy. Within hours, Imperial Star Destroyers descended into orbit around Kessel-Minor, landing heavy stormtrooper garrisons, taking control of all industrial refineries, and restoring full production of hyperdrive components for the Imperial fleet. The planetary deflector grid was recalibrated, and all insurgent networks across the sector were thoroughly dismantled. Darth Vader boarded his shuttle and departed the system, leaving behind a world completely subjugated and cowed into absolute obedience. He had demonstrated once again that no planetary defense dome, no automated droid army, and no political title could ever shield a traitor from the absolute crushing shadow of the Sith. Chapter 10. With Kessel-Minor securely under the iron grip of Imperial martial law, Darth Vader returned to his flagship, the Devastator, only to be summoned immediately to a private holocom frequency by Emperor Palpatine. The Emperor's blue, shimmering holographic image hovered above the command altar, his shadowed face twisted in deep calculation. Intelligence had reached the Imperial Center from the deep frontier of the Outer Rim, concerning an ancient, outer system moon known as Vorag Prime. The moon was a jagged, atmosphere-thin rock forgotten by modern navigational charts, but it harbored a dark, historical secret, a subterranean vault that had once belonged to the ancient order of the Sith prophets. The prophets of the dark side had been an esoteric, fanatical cult of dark side seers who split from the main Sith lineage centuries before the fall of the Republic. They practiced ancient sorcery, harbored dark holocrons, and possessed the ability to glimpse diverging pathways of the future. Reports from an Imperial scouting party indicated that an insurgent mercenary force, led by a disgraced former Republic intelligence officer named Commander Vorin, had breached the outer seals of the Vorag Vault. Vorin was attempting to extract a legendary dark artifact, the Eye of the Oracle, a massive, dark-attuned Kyber sphere said to amplify a dark side wielder's vision across light years and reveal hidden nexus points across the galaxy. Palpatine made his directives absolute. The Eye of the Oracle could not be allowed to fall into the hands of rebels, nor could any member of Commander Vorin's mercenary company leave the moon alive. Vader was tasked with descending onto Vorag Prime alone, securing the artifact, and purging the subterranean vault of every living soul. Vader departed the Devastator in his sleek, customized TIE Advanced X-1 starfighter. Navigating the treacherous gravitational shears of the Vorag system, he brought his ship through the thin, sulfurous haze of the moon's atmosphere. The terrain below was a bleak, cracked nightmare of black basalt cliffs, razor-sharp obsidian spires, and deep, bottomless chasms swept by freezing void winds. Sensor arrays were completely blinded by dense iron deposits in the moon's crust, forcing Vader to rely entirely on his deep connection to the dark side to track the life signatures of the mercenaries below. Vader brought his starfighter down near the mouth of a massive, cavernous chasm. The entrance to the ancient vault was carved directly into the face of a sheer basalt cliff, marked by colossal, weeping statues of long-dead Sith prophets, whose faces had been eroded by eons of void winds. Outside the entrance, Commander Vorin's mercenaries had established a heavily fortified staging camp. They had deployed heavy laser turrets, perimeter minefields, and high-frequency blast barriers, creating an impenetrable defensive perimeter designed to hold off any Imperial landing force. Vader did not launch an orbital strike, nor did he call for troop transports. He stepped out of his starfighter into the freezing, near-vacuum air of Vorag Prime, his heavy black cape billowing in the howling gale. His mechanical respirator hissed with rhythmic, cold precision as he ignited his crimson lightsaber, the blood-red blade casting long, dancing shadows across the sharp obsidian ground. The mercenaries on the perimeter spotted the solitary black figure advancing through the freezing mist and immediately panicked. Automated turrets whirred to life and dozens of heavy blasters unleashed a continuous, blinding stream of plasma fire toward the Dark Lord. Vader advanced directly into the hail of red bolts without breaking stride. His red blade moved with terrifying, effortless speed, deflecting incoming blaster fire with surgical precision. He sent plasma bolts ricocheting straight back into the automated turret sensor modules, exploding their power cells in bright bursts of yellow flame. As mercenaries triggered high explosive acoustic mines along his path, Vader reached out with dark side telekinesis, detonating the mines prematurely and sending clouds of shattered obsidian and fire roaring back over the mercenary barricades. Reaching out with both hands, he gripped two heavy hover transports anchored near the camp and slammed them together in midair with a crushing, metallic crunch, burying a squad of mercenaries beneath tons of twisted steel. Commander Vorin, watching the carnage from the entrance of the vault, shouted frantically for his elite Vanguard, a squad of cybernetically enhanced bodyguards, equipped with heavy vibro broadswords and personal deflector shields, to hold the threshold at all costs. Vorin himself retreated deep into the cavernous depths of the vault, rushing to complete the extraction of the Eye of the Oracle. Vader reached the threshold of the vault. The cybernetic guards stepped forward, activating their heavy deflector shields and swinging their vibrating broadswords in synchronized, lethal patterns. The high-frequency vibroblades were designed to withstand lightsaber strikes for short durations, allowing the guards to engage in close-quarters melee combat. Vader met their charge with cold, brutal efficiency. Rather than engaging in prolonged saber fencing, he utilized raw physical power combined with dark side telekinesis. Catching the leader's broadsword blade against his own crimson weapon, Vader used his mechanical strength to force the heavy sword downward, driving it straight through the guard's own boot into the stone floor. Before the guard could recover, Vader delivered a brutal telekinetic strike directly to the man's chest plate, shattering his ribs and launching him backward into the stone wall. Moving with terrifying fluidity, Vader sidestepped another guard's horizontal slash, reaching out with his left hand to grip the guard's personal deflector shield generator. With a surge of dark side force crush, he imploded the generator unit, while it was still attached to the guard's arm, causing a localized plasma feedback explosion that instantly neutralized the remaining guards in the entryway. With the entrance cleared, Vader marched into the subterranean depths of the Sith vault. The air inside was ancient, freezing, and heavy with the stagnant, suffocating pressure of dark side energy. The passageways were lined with jagged obsidian pillars, inscribed with ancient Sith runes that glowed with a faint, eerie crimson light in the presence of the Dark Lord. Ancient security traps, pressure plates that triggered poison gas vents and automated dart throwers, activated as Vader advanced, but the poison gas was useless against his sealed mechanical life support suit, and the physical darts ricocheted harmlessly off his heavy durasteel armor plate. Deep within the central sanctum of the vault, Commander Vorin stood atop a high, altar-like pedestal, surrounding a deep, glowing pool of liquid dark side energy. Suspended above the pool, locked within a multi-tiered mechanical cradle of ancient Sith iron, was the Eye of the Oracle, a massive, polished sphere of pure, dark-stained Kyber crystal that pulsed with a slow, rhythmic, crimson light. Vorin had managed to attach heavy plasma cutters to the cradle, attempting to sever the ancient iron clamps and drop the artifact into a reinforced transport crate. As Vader entered the sanctum, Vorin turned in absolute desperation, aiming a heavy, military-grade plasma cannon directly at the Dark Lord. Vorin screamed that if Vader took another step, he would fire the plasma cannon directly into the Eye of the Oracle, threatening to shatter the unstable dark Kyber sphere and trigger a cataclysmic dark side energy explosion that would vaporize the entire moon. Vader stopped at the edge of the central pool. He looked at Vorin through the cold, unfeeling red lenses of his helmet, his mechanical breath echoing through the ancient stone chamber. Vader told Vorin that his threats were born of a weak mind that did not understand the true nature of the Force, and that no weapon in his hands possessed the power to alter his fate. Before Vorin could pull the trigger of the plasma cannon, Vader did not strike at Vorin's body or his weapon. Instead, he reached out with the Force and targeted the ancient mechanical cradle holding the Eye of the Oracle. Using subtle, micro-telekinetic pressure, Vader activated the ancient Sith locking mechanisms within the cradle. The ancient Sith iron clamps snapped shut with a deafening metallic clang, locking the heavy sphere back into its original, immovable position and severing Vorin's plasma cutters in an instant. The sudden recoil threw Vorin off balance, sending his heavy plasma cannon tumbling from his grip into the deep, glowing pool below. Panic seized Commander Voron as he realized he had lost his only bargaining chip. He backed away toward the edge of the altar, drawing a sidearm with trembling hands. Vader raised his hand, catching Voron in a crushing force choke that lifted the former intelligence officer high above the altar. Vader slowly closed his mechanical fist, constricting Voron's throat while using dark side mind probe techniques to tear through the man's thoughts, verifying that no other rebel cells had been given the spatial coordinates of Vorog Prime. Extracting every memory and confirming that the secrecy of the location had been maintained, Vader delivered a final, cold twist of his wrist, snapping Voron's neck and dropping his lifeless body into the dark pool below. Standing alone in the silent, ancient sanctum, Vader stepped up to the pedestal and approached the Eye of the Oracle. He placed his mechanical palm against the smooth, cold surface of the massive dark Kyber sphere. As his hand touched the crystal, a massive surge of dark side visions flooded directly into Vader's mind. He saw flickering, chaotic glimpses of the galaxy's future, shadowy fleets clashing in deep space, distant worlds burning in atomic fire, and brief, agonizing visions of his past on Mustafar and Coruscant. But beneath the chaotic noise of the visions, Vader sensed the underlying, absolute power of the dark side, reinforcing his belief in his master's dark vision for the galaxy. Vader withdrew his hand, his breathing remaining steady and heavy in the cold air. Using dark side telekinesis, he dislodged the Eye of the Oracle from its ancient cradle, floating the multi-ton dark crystal behind him as he turned and walked out of the vault. Reaching the surface, Vader loaded the Eye of the Oracle into the cargo bay of his starfighter. He set automated demolition charges along the structural support pillars of the ancient chasm entrance, triggering a series of massive detonations as he launched into space. Tons of black basalt rock and obsidian collapsed into the chasm, burying the vault of the Sith prophets beneath a mountain of stone and erasing its location from the universe forever. Vader charted his course back to Coruscant, carrying the Eye of the Oracle to his master. He had accomplished his assignment with absolute precision, proving once again that no hidden vault, no mercenary garrison, and no ancient dark side secret could ever escape the crushing, unyielding reach of Darth Vader. Chapter 11. With the Eye of the Oracle delivered safely into the hands of Emperor Palpatine on Coruscant, Darth Vader was granted no respite. Intelligence reports compiled by the Imperial Security Bureau flagged an alarming anomaly in the Outer Rim's Mid-Sullus sector. A remote, ash-choked mining world named Vardos-Beta, a planet thought to be stripped of all valuable resources decades prior, had become the secret assembly ground for an elite, radical insurgent cell known as the Iron Vanguard. Unlike disorganized rebel cells operating out of improvised wilderness camps, the Iron Vanguard consisted of former Republic military engineers, rogue Mandalorian mercenaries, and disgraced heavy artillery specialists who had amassed an illegal arsenal of heavy military war machines. The Vanguard had constructed a massive, subterranean manufacturing facility deep inside a hollowed-out tectonic ridge, leveraging geothermal energy taps to power secret foundries. From these foundries, they were producing experimental, heavy armor assault walkers and high-output sonic cannons, capable of tearing through standard Imperial Star Destroyer hull plating. More dangerously, intercepted transmissions indicated that the Vanguard's leader, a brilliant and fiercely fanatic former Republic general named Kalen Voss, was preparing to launch a coordinated suicide strike against the orbital shipyards of Kuat, aiming to cripple the Empire's primary vessel production line in a single afternoon. Recognizing that a full naval assault on Vardos-Beta would alert the Vanguard in time for them to scramble their hidden fleet and execute their strike prematurely, Palpatine ordered Vader to eliminate the threat covertly and single-handedly. Vader was to infiltrate the mountain facility, neutralize General Voss, destroy the heavy manufacturing foundries, and leave no survivors behind to carry word of the Vanguard's existence. Vader made his approach to Vardos-Beta aboard a stealth drop shuttle, cutting through the planet's volatile, lightning-laced ash clouds without triggering the local seismic radar grid. Landing on the jagged exterior ridge above the facility, he stood amidst a raging ash storm, his heavy black cloak whipping against the gale. His mechanical respirator breathed with a steady, rhythmic hiss as he surveyed the entrance below. A massive, heavy blast door set directly into the volcanic rock face, defended by automated perimeter turrets, energy shields, and patrolling squads of heavily armored Vanguard mercenaries. Vader did not bother searching for an alternate ventilation shaft or security hatch. He marched directly down the open ridge toward the main gate. The perimeter turrets picked up his signature, swinging their heavy twin barrels around and unleashing a torrential hail of superheated plasma fire. Vader ignited his crimson lightsaber, the red blade blazing through the swirling gray ash. Moving with cold, deliberate momentum, he deflected the incoming plasma blasts back at the turret sensor housings, shattering the weapon mounts in brilliant bursts of orange sparks. As Vanguard troopers rushed out to reinforce the perimeter, firing blasters and heavy slug throwers, Vader raised his mechanical left hand, generating a concentrated wall of dark side telekinesis that caught every incoming bolt and bullet in midair. With a violent forward thrust, he hurled the trapped projectiles back into the mercenary ranks, clearing the entryway in seconds. Reaching the massive blast doors, Vader drove his lightsaber straight into the reinforced steel seam, dragging the crimson blade downward in a slow, agonizing arc. Superheated, molten metal dripped from the cut like glowing blood. With a brutal telekinetic push, he slammed the ruined blast doors inward. The multi-ton steel slabs crashed down into the staging hall beyond, crushing several Vanguard defenders beneath their weight. The interior of the mountain facility was a sprawling, multi-tiered industrial complex, echoing with the thunderous roar of geothermal turbines and heavy stamping presses. Alarms blared throughout the corridors as General Voss ordered his entire garrison to assemble and halt the Dark Lord's advance at all costs. Vader marched through the central assembly bay, where dozens of newly forged assault walkers hung from overhead gantry cranes. Vanguard heavy troopers, armed with rocket launchers and high-frequency sonic disruptors, took up defensive positions on the elevated catwalks above, pouring a barrage of explosives and disruptive acoustic waves directly down onto his path. The intense sonic blasts vibrated against his suit's external chest control panel, causing high-voltage static to surge through his audio receivers and forcing his respiratory rhythm to stutter erratically. Pain surged through Vader's cybernetic body, but as always, he converted the physical agony into pure, unadulterated dark side power. Channeling his rage, Vader raised both hands toward the massive gantry cranes above. Using raw dark side telekinesis, he ripped the multi-ton cranes out of their overhead steel tracks, dragging them down through the catwalks in a terrifying avalanche of twisting metal, falling machinery, and screaming mercenaries. The destruction collapsed the upper levels of the assembly bay, crushing the Vanguard's heavy artillery units before they could be deployed. General Voss, watching the collapse of his main defense force from the high-security bridge overlooking the central geothermal core, realized the facility was lost. In a desperate bid to carry out his mission, Voss initiated an emergency overload of the geothermal taps, intending to blow up the entire mountain ridge and trigger a volcanic chain reaction that would incinerate Vader, along with the Vanguard's remaining weapon stockpiles. Vader breached the bridge's blast doors just as the main console began flashing red with critical thermal overload warnings. General Voss stood behind a reinforced barricade, holding a heavy plasma rifle with white-knuckled grip, flanked by his two top Mandalorian bodyguards, equipped with jetpacks and flamethrowers. The bodyguards lunged forward, igniting their flamethrowers and drenching the doorway in a wave of liquid fire. The roaring flames enveloped Vader's towering black figure, the vivid memory of Mustafar flaring violently within his mind. Refusing to yield an inch, Vader channeled an explosive force wave outward, sweeping the flames backward and sending the fuel tanks on the bodyguards' jetpacks over-pressurizing. The twin tanks exploded simultaneously, vaporizing both Mandalorians in a flash of heat and metal fragments. Vader stepped through the lingering smoke, his black armor gleaming in the harsh red emergency lighting. General Voss fired his plasma rifle point-blank at Vader's chest, but Vader caught the plasma bolt directly in his mechanical palm, absorbing the energy seamlessly before closing the distance in a single, looming stride. He caught General Voss by the throat, lifting the former Republic general off his feet. Voss choked, struggling against the iron grip, spitting that even if he died, the geothermal core would detonate in minutes, reducing the entire facility and Vader to ash. Vader looked down at the trembling insurgent leader through the cold red lenses of his mask. He spoke in a low, chilling rumble, telling Voss that fire had already claimed him once, and that it held no terror for a Lord of the Sith. With a cold, swift motion of his hand, Vader snapped Voss's neck, dropping his lifeless body onto the steel grate. Without delaying a second, Vader approached the main geothermal control terminal. Rather than attempting to slice the complex override codes, he plunged his mechanical hand into the console's wiring harness. Using a combination of dark side precision and raw mechanical knowledge, he manually rerouted the primary coolant valves, forcing millions of gallons of liquid nitrogen into the core to stabilize the reactors, while systematically purging the facility's master data drives to erase every weapon schematic, financial transaction, and insurgent contact list stored within the network. With the data wiped and the core stabilized, Vader set localized thermal charges along the facility's primary structural pillars. He walked out of the mountain complex in absolute silence as a sequence of controlled explosions tore through the foundries behind him, collapsing the entire subterranean ridge and sealing the Iron Vanguard, its heavy weaponry, and its secrets under millions of tons of solid rock. Vader returned to his drop shuttle and launched into space, leaving Vardos-Beta a silent, lifeless tomb. He had executed his master's command with terrifying efficiency, ensuring that the rebellion's hopes of striking Kuat were completely eradicated before the galaxy even knew the threat existed. Chapter 12. With the destruction of the Iron Vanguard on Vardos-Beta, the Emperor directed Darth Vader toward a subtle and complex threat taking root within the high aristocracy of the core worlds. On the ancient, wealthy world of Brentaal IV, a crucial hub controlling major hyperspace nexus routes, a secret society known as the Obsidian Circle had formed among the planetary elite. Composed of planetary nobility, high-ranking shipping barons, and disaffected Imperial senators, the Circle was quietly leveraging its vast financial influence to fund shadow fleets and provide safe passage for insurgent networks across the core. Rather than sending an Imperial naval division to blockade Brentaal IV, which would disrupt critical trade routes and provoke political outrage in the Senate, Palpatine dispatched Vader to eradicate the Circle from within. The directive was absolute: eliminate every member of the Inner Council, seize their encrypted ledgers, and ensure the planetary leadership remained thoroughly terrified and obedient to the new order. Vader arrived on Brentaal IV in absolute secrecy, landing his shuttle in the private docking bays beneath the sprawling, high-altitude spire of Duke Valen, the leader of the Obsidian Circle. Duke Valen had gathered the 9 core members of the Council within his heavily fortified sky sanctuary, a lavish estate shielded by private deflector grids, automated defense systems, and a small army of elite, off-world mercenary bodyguards. Bypassing the primary security checkpoints, Vader breached the lower maintenance tunnels beneath the spire. Utilizing dark-side telekinesis, he crushed the structural locking pins of the private turbolift shafts, dropping elevators filled with mercenary guards thousands of feet to the city floor below. He moved upward through the spire, like a phantom of death, eliminating patrol squads in total silence, snapping necks with the Force, before a single distress signal could be transmitted. Reaching the Grand Council chamber at the apex of the spire, Vader found Duke Valen and the 9 council members gathered around an opulent marble holotable, reviewing maps of Imperial shipping corridors. As the heavy blast doors of the chamber buckled inward under a crushing telekinetic wave, the council members recoiled in terror. Duke Valen's personal security chief ordered his remaining mercenaries, a squad of cybernetically enhanced shock troops armed with high-frequency vibro swords and blast shielding, to engage the Dark Lord. The shock troops charged, swinging their vibroblades in precise, lethal patterns. Vader ignited his crimson lightsaber with a sharp, lethal hiss. Moving with terrifying grace, he parried the vibroblades with tight, economical strokes, slicing through blast shields, mechanical limbs, and armor plates in a flurry of superheated plasma. Reaching out with his mechanical hand, he gripped the security chief by the throat through the Force, hurling him through the high-altitude transparasteel window. The howling gale of the upper atmosphere rushed into the council chamber, scattering data cards and holoprojectors across the floor. Duke Valen drew an illegal, heavy plasma pistol, firing wildly at Vader as the Dark Lord advanced across the room. Vader didn't even raise his lightsaber. He simply caught the plasma bolts in the palm of his cybernetic glove, absorbing the energy completely before disarming Valen with a subtle flick of his wrist. Vader stood over the cowering nobility, his mechanical respirator echoing above the rushing wind. He reached out with his hand, seizing all 9 council members in a collective, suffocating Force choke. He lifted the aristocratic traitors off their feet, holding them suspended in the air as their panicked struggles gradually subsided into stillness. After extracting the master encrypted ledgers from the room's central console, Vader snapped their necks simultaneously, dropping their bodies onto the marble floor. He set the private sanctuary to self-destruct, boarding his shuttle just as the upper levels of Duke Valen's spire exploded in a ball of fire, collapsing into the clouds below. The sudden, catastrophic elimination of the Obsidian Circle sent shockwaves through the aristocracy of the core worlds. The remaining nobility on Brentaal IV immediately yielded full control of the hyperspace nexus routes to the Imperial Navy, ensuring that the trade corridors remained securely under the Emperor's absolute control. Chapter 13. With the Obsidian Circle erased from Brentaal IV, Emperor Palpatine summoned Darth Vader back to the Imperial Palace on Coruscant for what he declared would be the final, decisive strike against the lingering embers of open defiance in the Mid-Rim. Intelligence gathered from Duke Valen's seized ledgers had exposed the hidden brain behind both the Iron Vanguard and the broader insurgent network, a covert, heavily fortified asteroid citadel hidden deep within the treacherous rings of the gas giant Malachor-Minor. Known simply as the Iron Citadel, this dark star fortress served as the ultimate command post for High Commander Malachor, a veteran strategist of the Clone Wars, who had successfully united disparate mercenary guilds, rogue planetary militias, and former Republic admirals into a singular, highly disciplined armada. The Citadel was protected by an impenetrable, overlapping grid of planetary-grade deflector shields, heavy turbolaser batteries, and a belt of proximity minefields anchored to the surrounding asteroid field. Imperial Fleet Command advised a months-long naval siege, but Palpatine rejected the delay. He ordered Vader to execute a swift, decisive strike to dismantle the command structure, retrieve the master strategic database containing every hidden rebel base coordinate across the galaxy, and execute Commander Malachor. Vader departed Coruscant aboard his flagship, the Star Destroyer. Devastator. Arriving in the Oricon system, Vader bypassed the suicide run of a full naval assault. Taking advantage of a solar storm blinding the Citadel's long-range sensor arrays, he piloted a single heavy boarding shuttle directly through the chaotic asteroid belt, plunging through the Citadel's particle shields at close range and slamming the shuttle's armored drill nose straight into the fortress's primary hangar bay. The impact tore through the hangar doors, depressurizing the immediate bay and sending dozens of shock troopers flying into the cold void. Vader stepped through the boarding breach, his crimson lightsaber already blazed to life in the atmospheric haze. High Commander Malachor had transformed the Citadel into a lethal killbox. As Vader advanced down the wide, iron-plated corridors, entire sections of the fortress were sealed off, flooding passages with concentrated blaster fire, heavy flamethrowers, and heavy gravity field traps designed to crush an intruder under 10 times normal gravity. Vader met every trap with relentless dark side power. When gravity fields intensified, he anchored himself with the Force, driving his blade into the deck plates and tearing the gravity generators out of the walls with his mind. When elite squads of jetpack-mounted Mandalorian mercenaries descended upon him with flame projectors and capture cables, Vader caught the cables in mid-air, yanking the mercenaries off their feet and slamming them into one another before slicing through their jetpacks to trigger violent chain explosions. He pressed forward through the fortress, leaving a trail of melted blast doors, shattered droid chassis, and fallen mercenaries in his wake. Reaching the central command bridge, Vader found High Commander Malachor standing before the Citadel's main tactical terminal, surrounded by his last remaining veteran officers and 2 heavy combat security droids equipped with energy pikes. Malachor, realizing his fortress was breaching from within, initiated a total purge of the Citadel's central databanks to prevent the Imperial network coordinates from falling into Vader's hands. Vader did not pause to negotiate. He hurled his crimson lightsaber across the room in a sweeping, horizontal arc. The spinning blade cleaved straight through both combat droids and 2 tactical officers, before returning seamlessly to Vader's outstretched hand. Moving with blinding speed, Vader closed the distance. He caught Malachor by the wrist, just as the commander's finger hovered over the final purge button. With an iron grip, Vader crushed the commander's hand, forcing him to his knees as he reached out with his mind to pierce Malachor's consciousness. Through a brutal dark-side mind probe, Vader forcibly overrode Malachor's mental resistance, extracting the master security encryption keys directly from his mind, while halting the data purge at 99% complete. The full list of rebel staging grounds, supply depots, and covert sympathizers across 20 sectors was instantly locked into Vader's personal data cylinder. Malachor, gasping for air as Vader raised him off the floor with a choking hold, whispered through bloodied lips that killing him would change nothing, that the idea of freedom would outlive the Empire. Vader looked down at the dying commander with cold, unyielding silence. He remarked that ideas were irrelevant before the absolute reality of the dark side, then snapped Malachor's neck and cast his body aside. Vader downloaded the intact strategic database from the primary terminal and set the Citadel's fusion reactors to an irreversible prompt critical runaway. Returning to his boarding shuttle, he launched clear of the Star Fortress just as the main reactor core collapsed. A blinding, supernova white shockwave ripped through the center of the asteroid ring, vaporizing the Iron Citadel and reducing the entire Rebel command infrastructure to cosmic dust. Standing on the bridge of the Devastator. As it turned back toward the galactic core, Vader presented the captured database to the Emperor via HoloNet projection. The last major coordinated insurgent network in the mid-rim was dead. The galaxy belonged entirely to the Galactic Empire, and the shadow of Darth Vader lay dark and absolute across the stars.